Okay, sorry. Hi, I'm gonna be reading my discussion questions for you. I'm gonna try and make it fast instead of spending like 20 minutes because I don't think you want to watch a 20-minute long video. Sorry. I still have a little bit of like, my voice is like gone a little weird, so I'm sorry if I sound weird or if I like cough while I'm talking. I feel a lot better now, so thank you for letting me film it. I was like, even yesterday, like I couldn't get out of my bed. But anyways, does this story have evil characters? So I said, no, I don't think this story has evil characters, because what would you define as evil? Because yes, you could argue Beetee is viewed as the like main, like, as an antagonistic force, or that's what he's portrayed as, but does that make him evil? Because the reason he's viewed as a negative force is that he's doing what he needs to do to survive. He is following the rules that have been set in place for him, and he's doing his job. Like around page 119, when Beetee was citing historical text to Montag, perhaps Beetee was actually an academic, and he was just trying to fit in, sorry, to do what he needed to survive, so that he wouldn't have his things burned or be ostracized by society. How does he quoted Icarus and Daedalus and Caesar and Cassius to Montag when they were having an argument before Montag lit him on fire? How would Beetee know Roman stories if he's never read them? They said that fire captains could like take home like the firefighters could have one book a year, and like fire captains like picked up more than the rest of the firefighters did, but how would he know that much literature? Is it evil to put yourself first to try and survive? If Beetee's just trying to survive in this world, is it evil of him to put himself first to try and survive? And is it the actions or the intentions that make someone evil? Because Beetee doesn't seem to have any negative intentions in the things he's doing. He's just doing what he's been told to try and survive. Question number 2 said, what is the one book you would most want to memorize and protect from the firemen? I said the Bible. I said I personally don't go to church, but a lot of people that are like my loved ones, like my family and close sorry, my family and close friends do. So I know that would be important to them. And I chose the Bible over other religious texts because Christianity is just what my close circle personally follows. I don't know what book of the Bible. I'd probably just choose the largest one, get the most bang for my buck. Question, what does Clarice represent in Fahrenheit 451? Why must she be silenced or killed based on what you know about the text's fictional society? I said Clarice represents hope. She's proof that the younger generation can stand up for themselves and have their own beliefs, as Clarice is not. She doesn't have the same beliefs as the rest of the society they're in. She's like different. She believes in like talking with her family members, which they said was like an unthing. And she's like, she doesn't watch TV and she doesn't go to school. She kind of lives how Montag wants to live, but Montag didn't know that until he met her, because Montag thought everything was happy, and then he met her and they started talking, and he saw her way of life and wants to live like that. In page 158, when the city is being bombed, Montag thinks of Clarice for hope, even though he knows that she's dead. He says, he was like listing everyone that he loved and run. He was like, to Clarice, run. But Clarice, he remembered, was dead, and Faber was out, because he was thinking about how Clarice was dead, so she couldn't be hurt, and it kind of brought her hope. Like, she gives hope for the younger generation, brings hope to Montag as a source of comfort. Since Clarice shares the same values as the academics, she provides them hope that the younger generation may live like they do. And she must be silenced or killed because the society that they live in wants everything to be a very certain way. They want it to, like, they want control and they want censorship. And if the younger generation is starting to be brought up, and like Clarice is an example, and she has a different view than that, she must be killed to be silenced, or she'll start sharing her views, and then that could lead to like an uprising against the society. Sorry. Question: on May 9th, 1930, the Angela Herald paper jokingly printed, "When does a book become a classic?" When people who haven't read it said they have. Sorry. It's kind of hard to talk. When do you think a book becomes a classic? Who decides what books become classic and which don't? Think about various books you know are considered classics. Do you think all these books are still great books? I said there's different types of classics. There's like what you traditionally think is classic, like older books, and then there's like modern classics. On Pan Macmillan, what makes a classic? They say on panmacmillan.com, they published an article talking about what makes a classic, and they said classic books persist in thought and discussion long after their original publication. So for it to be a classic, it has to both be an older book and be relevant and popular and perceived well in the public eye. Who decides what becomes classics? I said the general population decides what becomes a classic, because for it to be classic, it has to be old, but it also has to be popular and well liked. So, like, not every single old book is a classic. It's just the ones you think of as classics are ones that were super popular and they're still in discussion to this day. So general population would decide what they want to talk about, what they like. Do you think all books, for the part where it says, do you think all these books are still great books and that's why so many people continue to read them, or do people continue to read them just because they're classics? I said I think people continue to read them just because they're classics, but that doesn't mean they're not great books. I think the label, once a book gets labeled as a classic, it kind of holds more weight and people are more eager to read that book because they're like, well, it's older and it's been around for such a long time and people still like it, that must mean it's really good. So because it's a classic, a lot of people go to read them, but that doesn't mean they're not good. Just because like the title gives it weight. Like if I were to say a book I read, The Sun Is Also a Star, like if I just mentioned, like you're not just gonna go and read that book, but I was like, oh, it's a classic, then that seems like a lot of people like it and it kind of gives it more oomph and makes people want to read it more. So I said I think the title of being a classic makes them want to be read more. How is Montague's wife Mildred a perfect citizen in this text-fictional society? I said because she's obedient. She does as she's told. She doesn't really think for herself. She's like everyone else, just like her friends. The people in power in the society censor things, and she doesn't question that. She just follows it. Like when she found out Montague had the books, she turned her in. I said around page 118 when Montague, there's the quote, around page 118, Montague started to speak twice and then finally managed to put his thought together. Was it my wife? Sounded the alarm. Beatty nodded. She's so obedient that she turns in her own husband just to follow the rules. She's the ideal citizen because she's so obedient. In a world full of censorship, she just follows the rules and doesn't really think about it. What does fire represent throughout the novel? How does Montague's interpretation and meaning change from the beginning to the end of the text? In the beginning of the text, fire represents control, and in the end of the text, it represents new beginnings. In the beginning of the novel, fire represented control, like firefighters control the public by burning books, and censorship, which is seen so heavily in this society, like things were censored through the use of fire. As the book goes on, Montague distances himself from the views of the firefighters, and we begin to see like that the control aspect of how he views fire kind of be taken away. After he fully leaves the control and he's like no longer with the firefighters, Montague views fire as like a fresh beginning. There's a lot of images of the Phoenix when he's with the academics, and also the bombs ruining the city. It's not viewed as like well, I shouldn't say it that way. It's viewed as like it's a malicious thing. The city's been attacked and it's been completely leveled, but they're viewing it as a fresh start, like a clean slate, and they're saying they're gonna go find the survivors and they can like turn them to their ways. The academics can like make them believe what they said. And there's a quote, but every time he burnt himself, he sprang from the ashes. He got himself born again, and it looks like we're doing the same thing over and over again, but we've got one damn thing the Phoenix never had. And Granger talking about the Phoenix always rising from the ashes and having to repeat new beginnings. Montag turns to books to rescue him from the society and said they help demolish his life. He kills a man, forced to be nomad. Does he gain anything else for the books? I said he gains clarity. Overall, Montag is at a net negative because of the books. He lost Mildred, Beatty, his house, his job. Clarice, they said, got hit by a car, but it wasn't ever fully clarified. Like, it could have been because of the books Clarice died. The only thing Montag gained was clarity. He got a new perspective on life, and he feels more at home with the academics. But was all that he lost worth what he gained? Because he seems to lose a lot more because of the books than what he gained. And what did other people gain? Because no one else gained anything. Because Beatty died, Mildred lost her husband. Like, was his clarity worth the suffering he put everyone else through? But I said the only thing he gained was clarity. Consider the major characters in this novel. Montag is Bradbury's protagonist, but what character do you find more intriguing or compelling, Montag or Beatty? I said I found Beatty more compelling because Montag's reasoning for things throughout the novel is always seen as kind of clear. Like, he wants to read books, he wants to not be censored, all that. But Beatty, you can't really tell if he, like, what he believes, if he's just doing his job, or if he believes what the academics believe. So I find Beatty more compelling. Like, what are his true beliefs? How does he know so much literature? And why did he want to die? Because when Montag had, like, the flamethrower pointed at him, he said, "How's that, you secondhand literature?" Pulls the trigger. So I want to know, I find Beatty more compelling. Is Beatty the story's antagonist? Are there other antagonistic force? I said I wouldn't say Beatty is the main antagonist in this. The society is, because the society kind of, it censors everyone, it made everything, it controls, brainwashes citizens. I'd say Beatty is more of an opponent or the enemy, but I wouldn't say he's the main antagonistic force. I think the main antagonistic force is portrayed as the society. What do you think Bradbury's goal was in writing this novel? What was its purpose? To show the negatives of censorship. It shows a future dystopian America world. They never specified that it was America, but you can kind of assume that, or at least in the region that America once was, if something happened in the future in this novel, and America's like not a country anymore in this world. But they were talking about how Mildred and Montag met in Chicago, so that would lead you to believe that it's American. This book was written in 1953, and the Cold War took place from 1947 to 1991. I said I think this book was written in a world Bradbury imagined if the USSR ruled the USA, because the USSR during the Cold War was viewed as very, like, controlling, censorship. Like, think of, like, the Berlin Wall, like, trying to keep the Western influences out of Eastern Berlin, and, like, the Iron Curtain, where they had, like, the communist countries in Europe, like no, like, Western influence. So I think Bradbury was trying to show what a communist world would look like during the time of the Cold War. I think that's what his goal was. The purpose was to show what America would look like if it was communist. And finally, would you recommend this novel to others? Why or why not? I said no. I didn't dislike the book. It was kind of a hard read. It takes a while because there's so many, like, similes and metaphors, and you kind of have to, like, process everything. It was interesting in some parts, long in others. There's complex phrases. I didn't mind the book. I'd overall probably give it a 6 or a 7 out of 10. But I said I wouldn't recommend it, not because I disliked it, but there are a lot of books I like more than it. So if someone were to ask me for a recommendation, I would pick something to recommend over this. It wouldn't be the top of my recommending list. Anyways, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to film myself reading, like answering my questions. And hopefully this video isn't too long. Thank you.